Welcome to LobbyComply Pod from State and Federal Communications. We are your source for lobbying, compliance, ethics, campaign finance, and election news from across the country. Hello, this is Elizabeth Bartz, President and CEO of State and Federal Communications. Let me transfer you to Joe May, who will introduce this week's podcast.
Hi, Elizabeth. I have with me today Joe Wasser, Senior Account Manager at State and Federal Communications. Greetings, Joe. Welcome to LobbyComply Pod.
Well, thanks, Joe. I am Joe Wasser. I am in my early stages of my third year of working here at State and Federal Communications. I am a sales exec, and it's my job to promote the products and services that State and Federal does so well, to introduce us to the people that could make good use of it.
So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I'm very excited about the charitable service hours that I have been doing here since I've been on board, and it's part of the culture around here. And I really discovered a part of myself doing this volunteer work that I didn't know I had in me. Honestly, the backstory was near the end of my first year working here, I looked at my paycheck and it said charitable service hours, 40 hours, all unused. And I never noticed it before. And I called Anastasia in HR and I said, "What is this?" And she said, "You don't realize that our culture is to volunteer and help others?" And I said, "I guess I don't know that." So I had never volunteered for anything. Honest to goodness, I am in my 60s and I've never volunteered for anything except the bingo caller in my children's elementary school, which my wife technically volunteered me to do. But anyway, Anastasia said, I work out of my home in Maryland. I work out of the DC office periodically, but, I'm a remote employee here. So she said, just look up your county and put, Google your county volunteer opportunities. So I live in Worcester County, Maryland, which is Maryland's Eastern Shore. And I wrote volunteer opportunities and it came up with a result of like 400 results, which was interesting. 397 of them were fundraising. And Joe, I raise money for a living. I ask people to, invest in our fine services and products. And I didn't want to do that for volunteer work. So there was one entry that said, hospice volunteer, simply companionship, right? And I'm like, geez, I'm not used to like people in hospice. My mom sadly passed away in hospice, but that's really my only exposure to it. I called the lady up that runs the volunteer coordinators for this volunteer program. In Maryland's Eastern Shore, there are 4 counties, I believe, coastal hospice services. And they said at any given point, they'll have something like 260 patients at one time. And the volunteer network is pretty big. And I said, my personality, you know me, Joe, I try to be funny. And I told the lady, I said, is there a fit for something like this? Somebody with my personality? And she said, believe it or not, there is. But you have to go through training to know when to be funny and when to maybe just be quiet and listen. So I said, so I just go to a class or something somewhere? And she said, no, you need 24 hours of online training. And I'm like, holy mackerel, that's a lot of time. And she said, well, it does count towards your charitable service hours, which it did. And I got to tell you, it was fascinating. It was really, really interesting. And it talked about different episodes that people go through in hospice and what volunteers go through. And I tell you, since I've been doing it, I really discovered a part of me that I didn't know existed.
What was it like walking in for the first time to make a visit at the hospice after you completed your training?
Well, you have to shadow someone. So you go in with another volunteer. You just don't start by yourself. And it was good because it was comfortable in that I watched a veteran volunteer provide companionship. And that was really interesting. I think the good question would be when I did it by myself for the first time. And that was truly, what do they say, get out of your comfort zone? That was a little uncomfortable at first because I didn't have anybody to back me up or save me or whatever. And I realized that, you got to understand the audience. Sometimes people are comfortable being approached, because I'm a stranger to all these people, right? And I say, I'm Joe, I'm a hospice volunteer. I'm here to just say hello and see if you want to talk about anything. And some of them are like, pull up a chair, and others are like, I'm not interested. And you just have to kind of gauge your audience. But I'd say it was a little uncomfortable, but it didn't take long to kind of get into a groove and understand what needs to be done. And I must say, you hear some really amazing stories, and it is really rewarding. I didn't realize how rich some of these people's histories and stories are. It's amazing.
I'm struck by how you really stepped into an important space here, being with people when they really needed it. How long have you been volunteering there?
Well, my training was about a year ago. So we're in December of 2024 right now. I think the training really started last December. I was shadowing people in maybe Q1 of 2024. And then I actually was assigned a specific patient in June. And, we had some really good meetings. Sometimes you go in and they don't have the energy for more than 45 minutes. Sometimes I stayed 3 hours. It was really, really good. But I'd say doing it on my own kind of in the spring of 2024. And, it was a active summer in terms of volunteering. Sadly, he left this world in late July. So we had probably about 5 or 6 sit downs together. We had good visits and not so good ones, but I really felt like we had a nice bond going. And I after each visit, I called his wife because she was working. He was in hospice and she was working, and she appreciated the updates. And, we chatted a little bit about what I observed and what he shared. And it was really a kind of a cooperative effort between she, myself, and the hospice coordinators in at Coastal Hospice. I got to tell you, Joe, I would not have done any of this type of work, happily volunteering to help others, without state and federal's culture. Elizabeth, when she hired me a couple of years ago, she said, we do a lot for others. I just didn't realize it was kind of part of what is on my plate. And I would have never discovered this part of me without the culture of state and federal volunteering. I mean, you all do so much more here in Akron, but I like the idea of pitching in myself in Maryland, kind of playing my role too. And I wouldn't have done it without the volunteer program.
So what would you say to someone who might be interested in volunteering in hospice, but might have questions or reservations about it?
Well, I always say, what's the worst that can happen, right? You try to do something. If you're uncomfortable with it and you try it a couple of times and you don't feel like it's clicking, try something else. There's plenty of volunteer opportunities out there. I just happened to pick hospice because it was one of, I run my mouth for a living. So listening and talking is maybe second nature to me. It may not be second nature to someone else. And if that is not the case, perhaps you can do something else.
Joe, thank you for what you are doing for people in hospice. And thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to LobbyComply Pod from State and Federal Communications. For more news, visit LobbyComply.com. To learn more about how we can guide you along the road to compliance, visit stateandfed.com.